Hello. Testing, testing. Hopefully you guys can hear me. This is the first time I'm doing both YouTube and Twitch at the same time, so forgive me. Welcome to the very first... let me change out the music real quick. The very first Galactic is joining office hours. There we go. This will be fine. There we go. Let's get to the proper screen right now. Hopefully this works. Hello? Hello? Does this work? Is this on? I think it is. Switch some issues up here. There we go. I think that's good. Hello, guys. Welcome to the Astropub. I need to get a haircut. But I was going to get a haircut today, and then everything kind of screwed up. So... I have no idea if this is working. Can you guys test it out? Apparently it's not working. Does anyone know of a restream chat that would work? I'll just open up this chat right now. Hold on, we're connecting to your channels. Test. There we go. Okay, I see Stringly. I'm not seeing anybody else though. What? Oh, now it's working. Okay. Working now. First time doing this anyway, so checking both sides. Welcome, everybody. My name is Paul. It's the Astropub. We're doing, This is designed as being a little bit more kind of talk show about games and everything like that. Mic is peaking. All right, let me reduce a little bit. I had some issues with the. I've had some issues with my audio as of late. That should be better. Hopefully not too bad. A lot of delay. What do you mean a lot of delay? The lot of the chat is delayed, or is my audio and video delayed? That's the question. A little bit of reverb. Fine here? Okay. No delay? Okay, cool. I stole it. It's mine now. Yeah, that's fine. Well, I decided to do it on both because, you know, I know there's a lot of people who are on YouTube who don't know that I stream on Twitch, and only know my content through that. So I figured one of these a week, kind of cross-promote a little bit and talk a little bit about lore. But nearly 3 minutes. Yeah, I think the on-screen chat is delayed. Thank you, Captain Moore. Well, that's the other thing is a lot of people were also have told me to, when I go live for things like for other channels and such, that for other stuff, that they wanted me to, like, oh, you're on YouTube, here you go, try this out. So there we go. Back to Jordan, can we skip to the part where you answer my questions about hot dogs? Yes, feel free to ask questions about hot dogs. The whole purpose of this is to just kind of hang out with you guys and talk a little bit about the game. Gray the Gamer calls it a Yik Yak session. I wanted to do a little bit more about lore, because I know a lot of people have questions about lore, and people also have want to talk about the game, so feel free. Feel free to ask questions, guys. Otherwise, I'm going to talk. Start talking about lore, cool shit and lore. Question, isn't streaming on multi-platform against Twitch rules? I was thinking of trying that myself. It's sort of is. Board Gamer does it all the time. So, it's a matter of how it works, you know. Hot dogs. Okay. So what is your question about hot dogs, other than the fact that they exist in the future? How much Carrick have you done? I've done a lot of Carrick. My name is Paul Shelley, and I'm addicted to Carrick. Let me put up the, I think I put my, yeah, I did. Copy link. Let's do the bit.ly. Create. Paste. Copy. Because they have hot dog stands everywhere. Yeah, so... here's the thing you gotta understand about food in Star Citizen, is that food is not what you think it is. Likely hot dogs aren't actually hot dogs. They probably aren't like what we see today as hot dogs. They're probably some sort of combination of sausages, hot dogs, possibly other things. Because when you're talking about things like Big Benny's is essentially supposed to be noodles, but it's marketed, it's somewhere between kind of like noodles, Chinese noodles, and Thai noodles, and Japanese noodles. It's kind of like an Asian fusion noodle. But if you also add in, because if you look at the flavors, they have other kind of factors as well. It's like some more like Central European and like Middle Eastern kind of flavors as well to it. So it's a lot of the foods in Star Citizen are fusion foods. So even though they have hot dogs, likely those hot dogs are not what you think they are. Maybe they're cheese infused or infused with peppers, you know, that kind of thing. Curious about how the Tavaran compare physically to human soldiers in like war. They're smaller than humans. Tavaran are the smallest species that in Star Citizen that are sentient. They are, I don't know, they don't have flight, but they're supposed to be pretty agile. And most of their tactics during the war, the first Tavaran War, was very much stealth and agility and stealth. It wasn't until the second Tavaran War that they switched from being nimble to being more phalanx. The Tavaran phalanx is fucking brutal in lore. Hey, RB, how you doing, buddy? As humans? No, they're a little smaller. If you look at the... Oh, I might be thinking of the Xi'an. Let me look at the height map. Star Citizen. There isn't actually alien height map that was out. Image. Here we go. I'll pull this up. I can actually do this, so you guys can see this. It's the Xi'an. So you've got Banu are bigger. Humans are actually Tavaran are taller than humans. They average around a little over 6 foot. So the Xi'an are the smallest. They're only average about maybe 5.5 feet than humans. And then the Tavaran are a little smaller than the Banu, then the Vanduul. So Vanduul are fucking huge. They're almost 8 feet tall on average. Tavaran dogs, I don't doubt it. There's a lot of like hate for Tavaran in the universe. Question: how old is the Karakin lore and interesting facts about it? So it is. There is no definitive date of when it was built. We don't have that lore background, but we do know it was likely built in the 29th century, sometimes between 2800 and 2900. If I remember correctly, the general date that was given was like 2890 or 2880. It was actually classified. Yeah, there's no definitive date, but it was likely built and tested in the late 29th century, and it was first began to be used in the 30th century, in the 2900s. It was classified, but it has been used in every major government-sponsored exploration program since in the 29th century, in the 30th century. Sorry, in the 29th century. So it was the last decade. Last century. It's been blown out a lot. I don't know what happened. I've tried to figure out what's going on, but there's nothing really there. My mic is... maybe my mic has died. I don't think it has, but... So I try to install voice meter. As you can see, I try to install voice mod, and voice mod caused something weird, and so I uninstalled voice meter and reinstalled it, but still something's weird going on. All right, for those of you guys who are on Twitch. Sorry for those of you guys who are on YouTube. I don't have quite the setup there yet, because I just started. I don't plan on streaming a ton on YouTube anyways. Let's close that real quick. What do you know about the conscientious upload and download technology? Consciousness? From organic to digital code, then back off into organic and freed water through rain. RB, I don't know what you're talking about, man. That's not really in Star Citizen lore. But I am going to remove those. Remove. And remove. Yeah, everyone's saying that. I don't know what I really don't know what's the issue is right now. I spent about 2 hours trying to fix it, and this is the best I can do. Yeah, everyone's saying that. I don't know what I really don't know what's the issue is right now. I spent about 2 hours trying to fix it, and this is the best I can do. But I uninstalled voice mods, so. Which is unusual, because it's usually, if I'm talking directly into the mic, I have to talk directly into the mic. Let's try it. Which is unusual, because it's usually, if I'm talking directly into the mic, I have to talk directly into the mic. Let's try it. He might, I don't know, it's unusual, because it's usually, I don't know. Yes, I know. It's again, guys, I know that the audio thing is weird. I literally, this has been a fucking curse for me. Every time I've tried to do this, something goes wrong. The audio freaked out last time. So, music is a little too loud. I can turn it down a little bit. There we go. Later, more. Thanks for hanging out, man. Yeah, if all else fails, I'll just reinstall. I'll back up everything and then do a full wipe of the I need a new graphics card. I think that's causing a lot of the issues that's happening for my streams and stuff. So. Hey, Mudtruck, how you doing, buddy? Let me get rid of this. All right, and the winner is One Wheel. If you're here, you won some beers. For those of you guys who don't know, I stream on the regular on Twitch, and there I do giveaways and those kind of things on a regular basis. You got to be active in chat to earn the points to be able to do it. It's a whole thing. I want to reward people who are coming in to watch this this is not at my usual stream time, so usual stuff, I should say. Your last Galactic historian, any other explorers that you didn't put in? There's a lot. I haven't gone through. I haven't gone through all of them, but there are definitely others in there. Wei Sung is probably the most important. Like, we already talked about him, but there are other explorers. I'm trying to remember who off the top of my head. Here you go. Get the systems real quickly. Centauri system, I believe, was discovered. So, like, the Centauri system was discovered by a survey ship. There was one that was discovered by, I can't remember the name of it. I think it was Hades who was discovered. No, Hades was discovered by a junk trade or tramp freighter. There was one where it was it was Nexus. Nexus was discovered in a weird way. Nexus was discovered by a surveyor looking for jump points, working for a company. They worked near the jump point region, then they didn't report it, and then when they left, they suddenly left the company, either founded their own company or worked for another company, and then claimed that they had found the system with once they had found it, once they got there. So there was a huge like a legal battle for like almost a century about who actually discovered the system and who had the rights to the minerals in that system. Because like the company that they used to work for said, hey, yeah, you used to work for us. We own that system because you found it while you were working for us. And the person was like, no, I found it separately. I don't know what you're talking about. See, Coral and Magnus? Yeah, you probably will. Magnus is a good place. Do you feel like an explorer with your Carrack? I feel like it's a good adventure vehicle. What's my favorite system and why? My favorite system. I think my favorite system, other than Magnus, is probably Saisei. Well, Saisei is the planet. I think it's Centauri. Yeah, Centauri. The Centauri system is probably one of my favorites. It has Saisei. It also has the desert planet. I can't remember the name of it. It's the home of Tumbril. This is where Tumbril is from. It's also the headquarters for Misk. So, it's an interesting place. Do I think the Carrack will play a major part in Squadron 42? No, but I do believe it'll play a part. You're likely going to have side missions or something like that where the Carrack is involved. I think the reason why they fast-tracked it is because the community really fucking loves it. It sounds like a lot of stories had a part in this. So what's your ideal scenario for a player discovery of jump points? Jump points... My ideal gameplay for that would likely be that CIG does not tell people that jump points are added into the game, non-discovered ones. They just slip them in, and they slip them in places where players do not frequent. So here'd be my the way I do this. I'd look at where the player traffic patterns are, and find locations in systems which are not traveled very often. And then I would put a jump point there. That means that it would still not be found unless you were actively searching. I would not tell anybody that was in. I would just do, other than, I'd maybe drop a couple of them in, see if anybody discovers them, and then say, hey, the mechanic is in. Or have a mechanic in so that you can just locate jump points, but maybe not necessarily scan them. But in lore is pretty specific about how you find it. There are specific sensors that read the fluctuations in gravity around a jump point, and you can get pretty specific. In fact, you can be right on top of a jump point and not open one. Like I said in the last video, there was the stellar photographer who was 400 meters from a jump point and didn't even know it because the little micro adjustments were happening because of the slight gravity variation. It really requires a very specifically tuned quantum drive to open a jump point. The Noble system looks amazing, you know it. I haven't seen the Noble system. I'd have to take a look at it again a little more deeply. Doing good, Dovican. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's an egg chicken scenario. I think you need to have the mechanics to detect them first, and then then put in the actual systems, so players know to detect them, but don't put in the actual jump points until well after. So because the second you put in hey, you can find jump points, everyone's going to be scouring over every inch of the system and be like, where's that jump point? And so you're just yeah, no, I wouldn't do that. I would put them in there and just make it as hey, yeah, this also helps you discover charted jump points, which the general location of, but there's no gate. So you have to kind of scan to find the entrance when you get close enough. That there's beacons that maybe help you triangulate where it is. Your navigational data is it's somewhere in this region, but you have to kind of know where it is by the sensors you use. No beer? Well, you do get beer. Because you talked about it. Let me give you guys beers. Beers, and at one-wheeled Odin, you get 20 beers for winning that. 20. There we go. Boom. Yeah, everyone got their beers wiped, so. My head looks good, thank you. Is jump points between two planets possible? Not in a system, not that we know of. Jump points exist in a very specific location, or specific locations, usually outside the plane of the ecliptic, or further away from the sun's gravitational pull. That tends to be the placement. Very rarely do you see a jump point placed right next to the sun. Hey, Masso. So why do we have exploration ships when we only have one system to explore and been everywhere? Because the exploration ships are multiple purpose. I think the best way of describing exploration ships is, at least in game right now, is that they're not really exploration ships as much as they are adventure ships. The whole purpose is to give you a platform upon which to have an adventure. Thus, having a bed is important for log outs, log back ins. For like the Carrack, having the med bed is a big deal because it allows you to heal and respawn on the ship instead of like losing it. It has a dedicated bay so you can land and take off in shuttles, so you don't have to like land the Carrack, which can be a slow process, especially if you're dealing with like bullshit in the ground. So I think of it more as like an adventure ship. Do you think we'll see further expansion into other first contact scenarios? We do have another first contact scenario, but it wasn't done by an explorer. It was done by the hubris of humanity, which is the Xi'an, and the Vanduul found us rather than finding them. The Tavaran were found by a explorer. I'd probably bring that up because that's kind of if I do another thing on explorers, we'll definitely talk about the doctor who found the Tavaran, because they literally, the first thing they said was, they're almost like us. They almost have the same technology. That doesn't seem like they've developed jump technology. So let's bring them into the Empire. Kind of, yes, new species that we can exploit. Unlike the Xi'an. That went well, literally within the same year. Fucking war. Deluxe starter ship, kind of. I mean, starter ships, the deluxe starter ships kind of serve the same purposes. So. Let's look through some of this other stuff real quick. Yar, that's the name of it. Centauri is probably my favorite system because it has Yar, which is like it's like the old Southwest in terms of like the like Boomtown area, and then you've got Saisei, which is a super advanced world, and they're like right next to each other. Excited for CitizenCon. I am. I'm interested in going. I mean, the thing about CitizenCon, which everyone should kind of remember, is that CitizenCon is very much a gathering of Star Citizen fans. It is not some place you go to for the most up-to-date information. It's cool to listen to the devs talk about specific things they've been working on in the game. That's great. And to be in a room full of people where the excitement is palpable when they come up and talk about cool new things or whatever. That's nice, but the real big thing is to be there with other people, just like any convention. Conventions are nice, but the whole purpose of them is for coming together. Do we think about the speculations regarding Port All-Star being destroyed, presumably by some aliens? Now, I've heard some people talk about how they don't believe that it'll be destroyed. I could see that as a waste of potential if they just swapped it out. Now, I could also see the damage states being too complex for them to make, because that's the one thing you have to understand. If it's going to be destroyed, it needs to be destroyed and the pieces need to fly off. And there probably isn't a damage state for Port Olisar. And as it's such an old station, they would have to map a damage state and then have that like activate at the right time. And that would be expensive with the old technology that is Port Olisar. You may have a situation where Port Olisar, they'll like put some flames on it, and then there'll be like an active battle zone. So if you can't spawn there. And you'll just see NPCs fighting with one another, and you can get involved on that, and then just have a news report saying that Port Olisar is destroyed. That might happen, and I'd like to see that happen, something like that happen, kind of like an event in lore where between one patch and another patch, it's gone, but you've been fighting over it for that entire patch. The thing is, Olisar's legacy, and they want to do it. It's true. But because it's legacy, and because there's no damage states, you couldn't have it dynamically be destroyed, like you can with ships, for instance. So it would have to be a set-piece battle, rather than being a dynamic situation, which is what a lot of people would like. So I could see it being the case, but it would require a lot of other functions to be in place before that to happen. Yeah, Wade's right. It won't. I don't know. Yeah. Hermongus has come on here before. He hangs out here pretty frequently, did I? We never get a conclusion to the garbled message of the landing zones, did we? There was some leaks about what it was about, but we didn't get a satisfying conclusion yet. So they may change those leaks, or they may just never bring it back. But we'll see. Do I think CIG will add more player-driven events like Jumptown in game? So the thing about Jumptown is that Jumptown was player-driven, and CIG had no. It was not intended for it to happen. The Jumptown Wars were not an intentional creation by CIG. It was an accidental creation. I think they want to do that, but I also think that they want to make sure that it's at the right state for them to do that. So the key is want to, but the resources aren't available yet. But I could see it. Oh yeah, Hormongs he's been hanging out here for the last 2 years. I've seen him in and off and on. Yeah, I think Pyro is probably going to be a big spot for that kind of Jumptown. I think the Pyro Gate is likely going to be the next Jumptown. People have talked about it being the next Jumptown. I think that's probably the location you'd see, but only if there's enough money to be made going from Stanton to Pyro, or vice versa. And I do think, Ferric, I do believe that there probably will be org wars, but I think that'll have to wait until the server meshing is in place. Funny story, I used to be part of competitive Battlefield when it was Battlefield 3. There was no organized events, I just was part of a group that or like a guild and a clan that I used to practice with for months. Back when I was a younger man, but then that whole thing fell apart the second they announced Battlefield 4. I was just like, fuck you. Yeah, I think server meshing, like that's the thing. It's like a lot of stuff that sounds cool, and then I know that CIG wants to do, they're going to wait until server meshing is in. I also think capital ships, there's a couple things that are, like, what's really exciting is the hint by Digital Foundry that they are actively, if not almost, or like closer to release of procedural damage states. Because what they showed off with that procedural damage states is not what we have currently. It's only maybe part of what we have currently. But that is implying that procedural damage states are a thing, at least visually, and that they're trying to get the internal components to work better. Can you remember which jump point was the one that disappeared? Do we think we'll get a system to go there again? That'll probably be a big story point in Star Citizen, but the collapse of a jump point, I can't remember what it was. There's a name for it, but I can't remember what it is. I have to look it up. Cray is going to be a busy place once prison comes in. Well, yeah, but so will be all the other places, the other security points. Hey, Fuzzy, how you doing, buddy? Yes, Hormongs, the leaks for that one was the Xeno threat, which is in lore. It's been in lore for the last 4 years. Xeno threat is a organization that runs Pyro. They're the kind of rulers of Pyro. And the idea that they're pushing their way into the Stanton system is kind of cool. I also, based off of what I've read, do I think prisons will be emergent gameplay like Jumpdown? Yes, Eeg. I think it is that prisons will be very much emergent gameplay. I think I think at least initially, there'll be people who will love to stay in prison and just be the top dog of prison. And I think as prisons get fleshed out, I think they're going to become an essential, if not required, part of being a criminal. One of the common things today in real life, especially in the United States, is that prisons are criminal colleges, because people who want to become better criminals, if they go to jail, they get a lot more connections with criminal syndicates and people who are higher up in the chain, like who have better connections, better jobs than they have, and are often able to turn those into jobs out of prison, to like going to work for syndicates or gangs or that kind of stuff outside of prison, which will get them better pay. And thinking about that as kind of a inspiration, I could definitely see that happening with Star Citizen's prisons as being kind of like, if you want to be a criminal and you want to get good reputation with all of these syndicates, instead of doing jobs, just go to prison. It'll be a VoIP hell. Oh, for sure. Do I think Javelin and Daymar is in Squadron 42? Yes, 100%. I believe all of the capital ships are in Squadron 42. That's the reason why they're not showing them off right now. Gross xenophobes. I'll murder the crap out of them. Well, that's the thing, is like xenophobes are pretty common in Star Citizen universe. One of the candidates running for the Imperator is a gross xenophobe, and like he just like murder all of them xenos. Very much a populist. It's hard to, I mean, like CIG is not making it subtle about the kind of politics they're talking about, but will be a chore. Highly likely possible push away a chunk of the player base. I think that people are over exaggerating that. I think a lot of people who are concerned about prison pushing away the chunk of the player base are the people it'll push away are people who are routinely involved in criminal activities, and don't want any consequences for that. And those are the kind of people who wouldn't want to stick around in Star Citizen anyways, because as more consequences start to get added, there's going to be less and less for them to do. Eventually, there'll be systems where they can go, frolic and be dickbags wherever they want to. And I really can't wait for that kind of gameplay in the game. But that's down the road. They need to establish the systems now. And I think a lot of people are worried that like your average person is going to like ram into somebody and then get a criminal stat, and then they'll be like, I'm gonna be. They won't make it that bad. I guarantee that. Very different, Homox. Very different. I'm doing good there, Fuzzy. Doing good. You're a Banu, buddy? Yeah. I'm definitely a little bit more sympathetic to the plight of the Tavaran, because they kind of got the raw end of everything. I'm not saying the Tavaran aren't crazy bird people who will murder us all in our sleep. I'm just saying that they probably shouldn't have gotten dicked over as hard as they got dicked over. That's the thing. The reason why they're adding it now, could they have waited for it? Yes. Will they wait for it? No. Man, I haven't even done the first and second Tavaran Wars yet. I've been wanting to do those videos on the first and second Tavaran Wars for a while, but I'm gonna yell at I'm gonna do them after I do the Jumptown Wars, and I'm gonna yell at Paranoid Penguin to help me out for that one as well. He's the voice actor who does the narrator for the Jumptown Wars documentary that's been put together. Is your same camera? You look more dapper than usual. Thank you. Thank you. Now, same camera. I know. I saw you here. That's why I was calling you out. That's the guy who did the stuff for the trailer. Well, it's more than just griefer protection. The prisons are about developing gameplay beyond typical just boilerplate storylines. Because, for instance, and I said this in the last captain's table, is think about this. If you're in prison and there are NPCs, like you have NPC representatives of various organizations, you could have those NPCs say, hey, send you a message saying, hey, the boss needs, the boss's, daughter has gotten into trouble and they're putting her in prison and they're going to transfer her to a higher security prison in 2 days. She's guilty as hell. She's going to go to jail forever, or she's going to get, executed, or some others she's in danger. So we need you to stage a breakout. So distract the guards, get them away from her, and help her get out. That kind of mission is possible. Or, hey, we've hidden a shiv here. Go kill the squealer. We don't care how you do it, but do it. Those kind of things will be interesting because those missions are part of the criminal lifestyle as it is. The assassination missions already exist in game, but more generally like that. Or, hey, you need to go to this location where you could escape and instead pick up these drugs and bring them back into the prison. My cosplay for the Syndicon would be an angry, drunk Tavarin who insults everyone. Yes. But yeah, you're right, Chevelle. They definitely needed to push it to a degree. They needed to get it done because it does help curb the kind of griefing, but it'll also eventually, when they get Pyro out, it'll push the more criminal-oriented players towards Pyro. And I can see in the future, if you're a pirate, Ruin Station is your home, you fly through the jump point, you go raid the player and NPC convoys and merchant traffic in Stanton, take what you can, fly back to Pyro. So Stanton is more of your visit rather than your home. And as a result, it's going to be very dangerous to do so. But high risk, high reward. Thank you, Steel Rain. How you doing, man? That one is probably not as good as some of the ones I've done in the past. I had to kind of make some shortcuts to get that done, but I hope you guys enjoyed that one. It was one that I've been working on. I had on the back burner while I was working on the Jumptown Wars. Are the Vanduul all evil? Not all Vanduul. So saying Vanduul are evil is super generic. Vanduul are clans. They're not. They're roaming tribes rather than a monolithic structure. Each kingship that exists in the universe is its own tribe. So one Vanduul tribe or clan might be different from another. Later, Mudtrucker, thank you so much for hanging out, man. So some of the Vanduul are trade actually with the Banu. We know that they have an active trading with the Banu, but some of them are more violent. So. Let me do a little quick shout out for Steel. Follow Steel Rain. If you guys haven't already followed Steel Rain, please do. He's a fantastic streamer. Does a lot of roleplay. And I love roleplay. So I love there's a bunch of role players coming in. I'm like, oh. And the crazy part is that a lot of the role players that are coming in, I'm like, I followed the fuck out of you before I started streaming myself. So Klingon Great Houses, yeah, but more fractured actually than the Klingon Great Houses. I believe Vanduuls aren't evil; they're just violent by nature. So think of it as that because they're nomadic, because they don't have a home, they use resources from a system and move on and wait for that system to regenerate essentially over time. So no systems are permanent. What happened was that humans conquered a bunch of, or settled a bunch of Vanduul like zones, areas where the Vanduul had been using for collecting resources, and because the Vanduul were on a different cycle, the clans who were there usually frequent there were somewhere else, and they came back and realized, oh shit, there's somebody who's trying to like stomp on our grounds, and started systematically destroying the humans and their systems. And it's really only up until just now in human history that humans are starting to actually put up an actual fight against the Vanduul. Up to this point, it's mostly been hold, retreat, because they didn't. It's hard to fight a foe that doesn't have a homeworld. You know, it's like fighting an enemy that doesn't have a capital or like land. The only thing you can do is really destroy their kingships, but only very rarely do you see a kingship in combat. I think there's been maybe like a dozen sightings of kingships in combat. So. Well, I mean, to be fair, there was no evidence of any settlement in places like Virgil and Vega. Well, not Vega, but yeah, Vega. Those places did not have settlements on them. So when humans discovered them, like within the first 100 years of human settlement period, there's human exploration period, they're like, these are just empty worlds. Let's just go take these empty worlds and terraform them for what we need them to do. So it had been almost 500 years, or I'm sorry, more like 300 years before the Vanduul came back. So it's like they weren't there. It's not their stuff, according to human culture, but the Vanduul culture, that's their stuff. But also Vanduul don't back down from fights. They'll come in. They may still be being pushed out. Their lands may be, the lands that they may have been foraging may have also been pushed out from there by people like the Kurthok. We don't know what the Kurthok are. We do know that the Xi'an and the Vanduul have had conflicts in the past as well. We know that the Banu do their best to stay out of the way of the Vanduul, but the Vanduul do not seem to migrate and to harvest Banu worlds. So it seems like the Banu and the Xi'an both kind of know where the Vanduul's hunting grounds are, and generally stay away from them. And the Xi'an have only proven to stay away from things that they're afraid of. And they don't seem to be afraid of the Vanduul. But they are very afraid of the Kurthok, because they nearly destroyed their civilization and likely invaded and conquered their homeworld, millions of years ago. So the theory that the Kurthok are pushing the Vanduul out of their home systems and into, grazing grounds further away is a legitimate one. It could definitely be a case, especially since the whole model is based off of the fall of the Roman Empire, and the Vanduuls are very much the Vandals, the Goths, the steppe people from Eastern Europe who were being pushed out or from Western Asia, who were being pushed out of their homelands and into German tribes, which are then pushing German tribes into Roman territory. And then eventually the Huns showed up, which were the ones who were pushing them all out in the first place. And so the theory is there could be the Huns, and the Huns could be the Kurthok. German tribes. Yeah, I mean, they were Germanic people, sort of, but they lived in, like, around the Black Sea. So trying to kill me? Have you heard of my oh, that's probably really bad. Have you heard of Hades? The Hades system is definitely like that. Sticks it back. Aimless. Do you have a note? I'm going to hijack a kingship. It's been done, sort of. Kingships are complicated though, because kingships are, like I said, they're like floating civilizations. If the Kurthak show up in ships that look like ponies, I'm out of here. They're probably not going to be like the Protheans, or like the whatever they called. What were the slate cleaners of Mass Effect? The Protheans were the ones they killed. So the kingship that was hijacked was nicknamed X7, I believe. And it wasn't so much hijacked as it was found floating derelict in space. That's where they got the Vanduul scythes that were sold from, because they found a kingship which had been from a young tribe. Because what happens in Vanduul culture is Vanduul will build up a kingship. It's usually just a frame. And then when they conquer other worlds and they harvest them, they turn everything into this kind of paste, this organic paste. And that organic paste, thank you so much for that resub there for 28 months. Let's go with gift. There we go. Lieutenant. I don't have the alerts up for this one just because this one's kind of a little more relaxed. Don't dance. I'm not going to be dancing for these ones because they're also going to be a little bit shorter. Kind of like Soylent Green, but imagine if they just took like organic mush and then turned it into concrete. That's kind of what it is. And so that's the reason why CIG went with them being more organic, is that kind of lore had already existed. Originally, they were kind of more like scavengers, and now they're more like organic, or more mulchers, as it were. But so kingships are a frame that are built into the frame is like rooms, and those rooms can be built in any way that the Vanduul want. Some of them could be hangar based, some of them could be troop transports, they could have living quarters, they could have storage. So they essentially piecemeal build their kingships out of the frame. So the less that's in the frame, the smaller and younger the tribe is. And often what will happen, at least in theory, is that the Vanduul will have some sort of inner conflict in the clan. And one group who's the losing group, who's not as powerful, will break off from that clan and form a new tribe. And that new tribe will then kind of vie for power with everybody else. Gather outcasts from other tribes and other clans together to create another powerful clan. And so the one that we discovered was a young clan that had apparently succumbed to some sort of biological virus. Because most Vanduul, if they know they're going to die, like if they know that their ship is going to be taken, or if their stuff is going to be left, they don't leave stuff for others. They destroy it. So they usually have a self-destruct system that'll blow themselves up rather than be taken alive, or like then being taken whole. That didn't happen. They died too quickly for the engines to overhaul. It's for someone to self-destruct. So the UEE found a derelict, adrift kingship, and they were able to study a lot. That's why we know a lot more about the Vanduul than we used to, is because of that. Giant termites. Yeah, kind of like giant termites. Is it possible that the Hadesians are hiding underground somewhere? It's possible. It's also possible that the Hadesians survived it and just no one has found them because they're either hiding underground or they're hiding somewhere else. They could have transformed. We know that the Blue Man is a real sighting that has been seen by every single species that has ever went through Hades: the Xi'an, the Tavaran, the Banu, and the humans, and possibly even the Vanduul have seen the Blue Man. We don't know why, though. What planet is the Constellation commercial? It's a fake planet. Precursor race. There are a couple of precursor races, but they're not precursor races the same way the Forerunners were, or the, that kind of thing. the Blue Man. So first off, before we get into too involved in the Blue Man, let me go through Galactic Historian and show you guys. I'll put this in there. Okay, so this should be put in both of them. Thank you, Ben. So that is a link to... Let me double check. There we go, yeah. So that is a link to Hades, my video on Hades and the Hadesians. But the Blue Man is a blue humanoid shape that seems to have its veins on the outside and has a bit of a shimmering blue to them. They're seen in passing, and they're only seen in the Hades system. But they're not just seen on the planets, they're seen on ships. So if you're on a cargo ship and you're flying through Hades, you might look behind you and you see the figure of the Blue Man standing there, kind of out of the corner of your eye, and you turn and look, and they're gone. Like seconds later, they're gone. Or you see them like dead on, and then like there's some like a bounce, and you kind of look away for a second, come back, boom, they're gone. They're ghost stories. The Blue Man is a ghost story in Star Citizen, but they're only seen in Hades. Well, one of the nicknames for the Blue Man is Toby. Figure that out. Fucking lore team. See, here's the thing. The Blue Man isn't the only thing that's seen in Hades. There are stories of ghost cruisers, of derelict ships that seem to appear out of nowhere and disappear. There's lots of creepy shit that happens in Hades. Because it's a burial ground. Hades was the site of a civilization that existed for millions of years ago that blew itself up, as far as we know. It was a multi-planet species. Every planet in the Hades system had been colonized, but the planets one of them was destroyed, completely shattered. A planet with some weapon they were using. All the rest of them have been bombed out with orbital bombardments, possibly chemical and biological weapons used on them. It was horrible. And the entire system is a graveyard of their artifacts. And it's only been the last couple hundred years where archaeologists and scientists have been going into Hades to try to figure out what happened. Yeah, Hades is... So if you're an archaeologist, if you want to kind of be that Indiana Jones in space, you want to live your Picard fantasies, Hades is the place to go. There is lots to discover in Hades. What happened to the Hadesians? Where did all of the... how did they blow themselves up? Is there technology to be found? Bering and Hurston Dynamics, both of them have sent multiple expeditions into Hades to try to find the technology that destroyed that planet, because they want to use it for weapons for the UEE. Yeah, legal graveyard robbing. It's salvage and smuggling. It is technically protected, but they don't fucking protect it. It's like it's a finger like, don't go to Hades. It's fucked up. But people are like, no, fuck you. Is it worth money? I'm doing it. Well, the thing is Mazza, we don't know if it was a planet cracker or not. The assumption is that it was a weapon that destroyed the planet, but we don't know. We don't have a lot of information. All we know is that planet was split, and it wasn't like that before, because we know that there are settlements on the planet, the places that weren't fucked up. That's true, but there's no evidence that they had something like that. That's the key. is it a giant super weapon? Did they just take another planet in the system and run it into another planet? Because they were all about wanton nuking the crap out of each other for at least for a while, at least for a bit. Massive amounts of internal conflict. There are sites where you can see the imprints of dead Hadesians from energy discharges, which were like essentially nuclear blasts. Vehicles and underground systems which are collapsed. Most of the stuff that's been found has been the underground tunnels around around the planets. And that's the key, Masso. That's the key. That's why Bering and Hurston Dynamics want to figure out how it happened, because they want to know the energy source that happened, that caused it in the first place. That energy source alone could essentially remove the requirements for large ships like the Bengal carriers, or even be able to build massive floating cities, which could act as combat areas, or even if you could miniaturize that, because these guys didn't know about jump technology. They possibly could have not been as advanced in terms of dealing with it. Yeah, but the power alone to do it would be insane, which is why, like, all of these companies are like, power? We like power. We do know that one has Tavaran. The Tavaran are in... let me look it up real quickly, because there's 3 systems that are Tavaran systems. One is Elysium, which still has them, but minimal. That's their old homeworld. They call it Calith, but it's called Elysium 4 now. The Branagh system is another one. And Cabal. There we go. So there are 3 systems: the Cabal system, the Elysium system, and the Branagh system are the 3 systems that are 100% Tavaran. The Cabal system is technically UEE, but when they discovered it, they found massive caches, abandoned Tavaran cities with massive caches of weapons. Likely, it wasn't discovered until after the war, the Second Tavaran War, and they had, or maybe in the First Tavaran War, and they had abandoned the system because they couldn't control it. But we do know that there were recent weapons found in the Cabal system. So, recent Tavaran weapons, like in the last couple of years. So it may have only been abandoned recently, or it may have been being used by other forces in Tavaran forces as a weapons cache location. We know that the Branagh system does have refugee Tavaran. It's kind of like the only place that the Tavaran as a people have that is not linked to the UEE. And it's pretty fucked up. Hey, Dr. Scarlett, how you doing? Or Dat Scarlett, how you doing? Yeah, they're right next door to the artificial planet, which is one of the, and it's a really bad one too. Dusty, thank you so much for that follow, man. Just think that asteroid killed the dinosaurs, didn't even actually hit them. Yeah, but that was destroyed the dinosaurs, not crack a planet in half. Yeah, Matt. So the protomolecule from the Expanse. Basic idea. Same idea. Only they didn't want a relativistic kill mission on the planet. They wanted to use our world as building blocks for their own stuff. And fucked up. Aliens. Yeah. You're enjoying the story. I wish the mic wasn't middled out, though. Is it too soft? Too loud? It's just fucked up right now. There you go. This is a test. Checking the mic to see what the quality is. How bad it is. See what the quality is, how bad it is. That's not too bad. That's about my quality, typical quality. Keep painting pictures in your head. Okay. Magnus is a cool system because Magnus is Space Detroit. I love Space Detroit. Story about Magnus. Magnus was the home of the UEE Navy. It's where every ship in the UEE Navy was built up until about 200 years ago, maybe about 100 years ago. And then they moved that to another system further away that had a little bit better resources. But because it was a Navy, it was where the Navy built their ships. It was a military system. No one could settle or build there unless they were the families of military personnel or the engineers building the ships. So when they left, even though it was they had built up a pretty sizable infrastructure, there was no one there to replace them. So that's why Drake Interplanetary showed up and was like, hey, we'll take advantage of this. Kruger was there for a while the military was there. Think of it as kind of a gated community that became ungated and lost all of its like, everyone left. It's a giant McMansion complex. You know, it's a gated community where half of the residents have left. And no one has replaced them. Or the people who did replace them were criminals, were outlaws. People wanting to use the old warehouses to store drugs. So. What I'd tell you about Nine Tails. Nine Tails exist in Stanton. They're a local Stanton gang. They seem to be all over Stanton. They are a gang in this traditional sense of like a street gang. They're not really pirates. They're not part of a syndicate. They're kind of on their own. The Nine Tails do seem to have some control over the drug trade of Stanton, but they are, again, like a local Stanton gang. So they're made up of people who, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, there's not a lot we know about them because they don't have a mission giver. There's no their purpose is to control Grimhex, which is what they do. DJ Knight. Let me get some shots and cheers in chat for DJ Knight. Welcome, everyone, from DJ Knight Stream. My name is Paul, Berserker 01, Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender here at the Astropub. Welcome to Galactic Historian Office Hours. Get a follow command for DJ Knight. Once everything dies down a little bit. So many names. So many names. AJSA Black Wolf, thanks so much for that follow. Funny story, Black Wolf. I actually met Joe at CitizenCon 2 years ago. Him and other Joe. I actually talked to the other Joe for a while because I teach in Austin and they're from Austin, and so we were talking about like schools they went to, and talking about how I was the problem. Coming in from out of Austin, driving prices up. He is a cool dude. He's a cool dude. He's busy, though. He's real busy. Other Joe is really nice. What do we know of the Syndicate? There's at least 2. I don't remember the name of the Syndicate that Tisa is part of, but that's the new Syndicate. That's the Syndicate that is coming into Stanton to try to take over. The other Syndicate is controlled by Klim and the dude from Microtech. Wallace Klim, another person in... the guy who does all the races in Grimhex, who's supposed to be in Grimhex, and this other guy in the bar at Microtech. They're all part of this local Stanton drug ring. Everyday Gamer, Juna, thank you so much for that subscription. Welcome. Let's get some more beers and that kind of stuff. You probably do about that. I haven't done a lot of research into the local stuff because I haven't done a lot of the detailed. They're bad. Yes, Chav Hunter. How you doing there, DJ? How was your stream? What were you up to? Initial D Twitch Rivals land race. I'd love to see Twitch Rivals work with Daymar Rally and do something like that. That could be kind of baller. Twitch streamers trying to do the Daymar Rally. I hope they cut out the QT time any further. I like running around while traveling. I feel like they're not going to, but you also got to remember that Stanton is the first system we have, but we also have Pyro. Pyro is like almost twice the size of Stanton in terms of its actual size. So even though the QT times are faster, you're going to be longer traveling in other systems as well. Eddie Parr, thank you, Jay Calvin. Eddie Parr, that's his name. How populated are space stations supposed to be in lore? A few dozen people or thousands? Depends. Some stations have thousands, but most stations are way stations. Like the harbors and the stations that orbit around planets in lore. Those are job sites. Think of them as visitors centers or like harbors or train stations. Like it's where cargo is unloaded and loaded in, and people kind of get off. It's a kind of mixture of like harbors, airports, and train stations where you see passengers and goods coming off and going onto ships as they fly away. So you're not going to see a ton of people living on the stations, but you'll still see a lot of maybe transients, people who are like in between locations. And the rest stops, some of them are entirely abandoned at certain times of the year. So if the rest stop in its orbit is away from all the travel lanes, they pretty much shut it down and then close up shop, possibly for years, until that station comes back into a proper orbit where they can make more money. That's right, Diablos, but they also seem to be newer. The syndicate that she's part of is one that has moved into the system, whereas Wallace and Eddie Parr are part of a group that is more local. Likely Wallace and Eddie Parr are local Stantonites. They're people who were born and raised in Stanton. Whereas Tisa is born and raised in Stanton, but she used to work for Blackjack and then got hurt, and now she's working for the syndicate because Blackjack kind of screwed her. A few hundred people at a time, including the people that work and maintain it. Essentially, yeah. You'll probably have some people who live in the stations long term, who are dedicated to station personnel. Very rarely would you see, like full time living in a station, though. Is there any lore on UEE Area 51 site locations? Yes. One of them was recently revealed. Let me look up what I have. It's where they tested the Eclipse program, which was designed specifically to counter the Vanduul. They declassified the Eclipse because it was too expensive for them to continue it. Looking up all my notes. Fora. The Fora system. Nemo, specifically. Oh, no, not Nemo's. Generic nerd, thanks for that follow. You gonna be Krim? Hey, Kraken. Cracklin. What's going on here then? Just kind of talking about lore, talking about Star Citizen lore, talking about the game. Just kind of a hangout, talk sort of stream. Tisk tisk. What do you mean tisk tisk? Are there go-to planets with multiple cities? Yes. There's plenty. I mean, even ArcCorp has multiple cities. It's just likely CIG is not going to be making full-blown landing zones for multiple landing zones for each planet. Dragons, did you comment? Yes, I am telling CIG secrets. Stop telling the CIG guy that I'm telling CIG secrets, okay? Oh, it's just multiple capital cities. No, there are on Earth. And Terra also has multiples. But Terra Prime is still the capitals. You'd have landing zones, only one or two landing zones. I mean, probably only one landing zone per planet outside of Terra and Sol. Landing zones are a little bit more difficult because almost all of them are handcrafted by CIG. And that seems to be the hardest part about planets. Isn't necessarily the planets or the outposts. It's the landing zones. It takes a while to sculpt that. Oh yeah, you do have the multiple capitals on Chiron, on Chiron. Chiron. They call it Chiron. Yeah, it's spelled Chiron, like the ferryman of the dead, but they pronounce it weirdly. We're close to have Crusader Industries live in ships. In the shipyard city, Crusader lore is rich with full stories. Do you have some of those to tell us? A lot, Zefiro. I actually did an entire video on the lore of Crusader. Though Crusader itself, the planet itself, is interesting. I do not know how or even the handwavium of how the platforms float in atmosphere. Likely it has to do with pressure differentials. So like the top layers of the clouds in Crusader are lighter. I guess. I don't know how that works. But essentially it's something lower gravity is in the upper levels of it. Is there any lore of mining ships with lost fortunes? Nothing specifically. There's always stories from every location. We'll have a couple of those, but there's no big cache. There's no big story of this one lost ship that has tons and tons of like valuables on it. The closest thing to that would be the Artemis Project, and the Artemis Project was a ship that was launched pre-discovery of Jump Points, through discovery of jump points, that was using quantum technology to try to get to the nearest star, but it would still take them hundreds of years to reach that star. And they lost contact with the Artemis about before they even left the solar system, and they don't know what happened to them. So that's probably the closest you're going to get. You think they'll surprise us with refueling mechanics when Crusader is reworked? It really depends on how far along refueling is. I think refueling is still waiting for docking and the whole physics rework systems. Once that's in, you'll probably likely see some discussion on how to get that done. CIG tends to not be coy about what they're working on. If CIG is working on something close enough that it's going to be tested, it's going to be they're going to talk about it a lot. They don't shut up about it unless it's coming around CitizenCon. Then they shut the fuck up about it because they want to reveal it at CitizenCon. But if they're not talking about it, they're not seriously looking at it. They might be working on it, but they're not to the point of like implementation, generally speaking. Wasn't there a caterpillar used in a heist that went missing? No. The caterpillar did not go missing. The caterpillar's still there. Was still there. They used the caterpillar to ram another ship and then used it as a boarding device to get into the ship, steal the valuables, and then get into the command module of the caterpillar and use that as an escape vehicle because it has its own quantum and jump drive on it. So the caterpillar hull was still stuck to the side of the other ship, but they used the other ship as a getaway vehicle. Janus was the AI on board of Artemis, which is suspected to be the cause of its disappearance. The AI has troubled history in Star Citizen. It isn't so much outlaws as it is approached with a stigma and fearful caution. That is correct. I would also take it from the CIG guy. Yeah, AI isn't necessarily... It's restricted. AI research is heavily restricted. But Artemis was the ship. Spider doesn't have a crash bangle. It's another... The Olympus is the one that crashed. That's its own landing zone. That's in a different place. Spider is a bangle. Not really a bangle. It's multiple ships. Spider is just a hodgepodge station of derelict UEE ships, which have been strung together to form a landing zone. That's why it's called... Well, the system's called Spider. Right? No, Cathcard's the system. It's called Spider because it's like spider, like spider legs all over the place. You're a big lore nerd? I'm glad. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard about Galactic Historian. I know Tyler never shuts the fuck up about it, which is I'm grateful because I know he talks to people in the office like, hey, check this out. Paul made this thing. Please watch it. But yeah, null system. Thank you. Funny story about the Olympus. The last stand of the Olympus is the reason why we have the Gladius. The stiletto fighters, which were used during the First Tavaran War, were the last. They were the cap, I believe, the combat air patrol at the time. And when the Olympus went down, the stilettos were the last ones to go down. They went down swinging against the pirates that attacked them, and the story of the last stand of the Olympus was super inspiring, and it became a huge kind of like morale boost, even though they lost the think of it as kind of like the Alamo sort of thing. But because of how effective they were, the UEE ordered Aegis to replace the old stilettos with a new ship, and that's where they came up with the Gladius. So the Gladius is directly linked to the fall of the Olympus. There is. I want to say Nemo system. There's one system which is nothing but ocean, but it has ice at the top and the bottom. I have to look at that. Might be the Nemo system. It's actually protected by the Fair Chance Act because they found life on it after humans had already been living there for a long time, deep under the oceans. There's there's green, which is almost all oceans, which is where the Murray Cup takes place. There's a lot of places that have large oceans, if not mostly oceans. Where are flat cats and how can I get one? They're illegal to get. They are definitely illegal pets. I think they're Terran, but I'll double check because Terra has higher gravity. So yeah, Campos. The Alice system, Campos. Which is where green is. Ellis 4 is where the flag accent from, which is called Campos. Yeah, Kraken's referring to the project that turned into the Ark station on. God, I can't remember it. There was was it the Ark? Yeah, I think it was the Ark. There was the Mezzers tried a experimental program to turn terraforming into planet killing, and it didn't work. But the remnants of it ended up becoming the basis for the Ark station, which is where the Galactopedia is held. I think Babylon 5, very inspired. But yeah, terraforming is a art rather than exactly a science because the key is to balance all of the stuff together. So, for instance, in places like Microtech, they fucked it up because Microtech is further out in the green zone, so the green band, so they mistook something and they caused it to be much colder than it should have been. And the problem about terraforming is that it's a lengthy process. Terraforming isn't something you do overnight. It's not something that takes a year. Terraforming is something that could take 20, 30 years to complete. And because it's so expensive, often you have one shot and that's it. And you also often have to build proprietary, like bespoke stations to just terraform an area. That's one of the reasons why ArcCorp is actually pretty famous, because they are actually able to turn terraforming stations to become mobile stations. So they could turn them into, you could start using them for terraforming. Yeah, it's ArcCorp. It's ArcCorp. Yeah, it did. I have a video on that. um, why am I blanking on it? It's the first Fair Chance Act world. Garen 2. Massacre of Garen 2. Garen 2's massacre, because the terraforming company was owned by the cousin of the last Mezzer, who knew that there were sentient species living on this planet and just said, fuck it, and just terraformed it anyways. And rebels got a hold of the footage of these sentient species literally choking to death because of the terraforming. And then they broadcast that all over the UEE and said, yo, this is the Imperator. This is his cousin doing this. This is literally the kind of abuse of power you've been seeing. Caused a lot of protests to happen, and then the protests spiraled out of control. Mezzer did what Mezzers normally do, which is try to stop everything with an iron fist. But they had learned how to get around blocks from the Mezzer regime, so news started to spread even more about atrocities that the Mezzers were doing to try to stop the violence, which caused more violence, and eventually the Senate itself basically stormed and dethroned the last Mezzer. We don't have a lot of details on what Linton's last stand was. We don't know if he surrendered and was arrested and executed later, or if he died in combat. I do know that he's probably likely killed during the combat, because it was a firefight to take him down. Yeah. Craiglin is right. Gib Genesis, yeah. Do I think the Crusader Industries ships will before the end of 2021? Probably. I mean, there's already 2 that are in being processed right now. Do I think the Prowler has is an effective dropship / capship border as described in lore or in the PU? It seems most backers think they'll probably will be useless for some reason. The Prowler is going to be very useful. It is, in lore at least, it's been touted as the stealth dropship because the UEE was like UPE at the time. UPE Navy personnel were absolutely terrified of the Prowler because Tavaran strike teams would find a ship that is away from the fleet, board it, kill everyone sometimes without them even knowing that they're on board. So the Prowler, at least in lore, and lore tends to fit with function, is going to be a low signature, hard to detect ship that can deploy things very rapidly, which is nice. Ben, visit Earth. If you want to see where humanity is going, visit Terra. Senator Lennar Royce. Terra. I know that quote. No, even the Xi'an are kind of sketchy as fuck. What's Earth like in the time we've seen the game? Full out cityscape? No, not really. It's not really like ArcCorp. The areas that have been built up or continue to be built up, but a lot of the areas, the old cities, are being preserved because for historical purposes. So like New York is bigger, but a lot of the old buildings are still preserved. Same with like France and Paris and Moscow and all those kind of places. A lot of the older relics or older monuments are being preserved. The reality is that Earth is a lot emptier than you think. Most people have left Earth. That's the argument between Terra and Earth, is that Earth is not in a very good strategic position compared to the rest of the planets out there. There's only 2 jump points in and out, and they're not that big. I think there's only 1 large jump point out, so it can be kind of a problematic to get there. Most of the population has left. There's still a population there, but it's not nearly the size even to what we have today. most of the population of humanity is spread out amongst all these different systems. Earth is very much a relic of the past. It's mostly, think kind of Washington, D.C. today. It's a planet whose sole purpose is to remain valued for the fact that it's the capital. There's a lot of political wrangling that goes on there. Okay, before you get too impressed about me knowing Lenara Royce, I literally used that quote in a video I did describing the conflict between Earth and Terra. Yeah, kind of like Canberra. Like think of it like a city that is designed as the capital. Rather than being just naturally the capital, it ends up becoming more focused around politics and more about like the power that you can get and can't get in those kind of regions. That's what you're looking at when you're dealing with Star Citizen with Earth. Soul. Earth is very different. Earth is, it's not, think of it as like a big museum. It's a big place where people, like, outside of politics, it's very much a place where people will go, kind of like DC is a good an analog for that. You know, DC is best known for its museums and then also its seat of power, but also the museums that are involved. It's also known for having incredible poverty, but I don't think Earth is really that like that in Star Citizen. Do I think the Prowler will be difficult to buy in game? Likely. I mean, Prowlers are essentially decommissioned military ships, modified for human use that were designed originally by the Tavaran. I think that you'll have a hard time finding places that sell them outside of like Elysium or military shipyards. I don't think they'll be impossible to find. I think you'll just have to know the right people or have the right reputation. A lot of people tend to think that, like, oh, this ship's going to be super rare to get. And you might see dozens of them, but you'd have to, rather than just, like, being able to purchase them anywhere. But I don't think being rare and being hard to get are two different things. Rare would mean it just most people won't get them. But if you want to get them, you have to do the right mission chain, or you have to have the right reputation with the right people and have the right time and the right money at the right time to purchase them. So think of it more as more difficult to acquire. Is Terra even terraformed? It's not. As far as I know, Terra is not terraformed at all. Terra is naturally habitable for human life. Thanks for those gift subs there. UK dude, that massive 10. I'm not partying for tonight, but thank you so much, UK dude. Shots and cheers in chat for UK dude for all them gift subs from here on Twitch. It's me, Baba Ganoush. I like that. Star Helix. What do the Banu have to trade that's valuable over other races? Everything. Everything. The Banu are all about unique. So the Banu will probably be speaking about Tavaran technology, like the Prowler. If you don't get it in human sector, you could probably find one in Banu space, because the Banu are all about the shiny. Like, they're birds. I mean, they're all about the shiny, or not birds, because the Tavaran are birds, but the same kind of concept. They're all about the uniqueness. So what you go to the Banu for is for something that's hard to find or not easy to acquire. So food, medical supplies, equipment, technology. If you need to find some rare Xion technology or Vandul technology, you're not going to find it easily in human space. You may have to go to Xion space or Vandul space to get them, or you can just go to Banu, and they'll probably have it. Why aren't the Banu prosecuted for the super sketchy things they do? Don't they kind of get away with anything? Because the Banu aren't really a unified race. And they're not really super sketchy as much as they are opportunistic. They're decentralized. And they also have an active trade agreement with the UEE. They've had an active trade agreement with the humanity since first contact. So there's a lot of like very specific rules that the UEE and the Banu kind of deal with. And most Banu, if they're dealing with crazy stuff, they can just, if they're in the UE space, they get in trouble. They just kind of scamper across to the Banu border, and then it's up to the Banu personnel, like security personnel, to follow them. But because the Banu are so separated, it's a lot harder for them to catch them. In fact, there's only one legal entity that can cross the Banu border chasing after a criminal, and that's an advocacy agent. The agent of the advocacy is the only one who can cross into Banu space because of the treaty. So, they're pretty energetic. Yeah, they're very energetic. The new is better. New is always better. Old can be forgotten. Fuck the old. The new is what we need. That's kind of the Banu mindset. Banu stole the shield tech. Banu just acquired the shield tech. I don't know what you're talking about. In lore, it's said that merchantman is handed down from generation to generation. Does this mean that the Banu don't actually sell the Banu merchantmen to humans? If so, how will players obtain them? They do. But because they're so valuable, they tend to be handed down rather than buying a new ship. Think of it as kind of like a house. A Banu merchantman is, or like a store, or to a lesser degree, a car. It's hard to do it in modern day. But there are people who are living in the same house that their great-great-great-grandparents did, or own the same company that their great-great-great-grandparents did. Same idea. It's a very incredibly valuable piece of technology. They're not hard. It's not that they're hard to make. They're just really expensive to make because of what they are. They're built the way they are. And also because, as was said about kind of the magpie thing, likely a Banu merchantman is going to be different from every generation. Each generation will probably make new additions, swap out old tech, put in new tech. So a Banu merchantman that's been in a family for 5 generations is going to be a lot more modern than a brand new Banu merchantman, because they've modified it over the years for the purposes that they need to. You're thinking about it like that. They still do build merchantmen. They build merchantmen. They build defenders. They have other ships that they build. They're in fact entire Suli, which is kind of like a guild or a clan that are dedicated to building merchantmen. It just depends on which Suli's in charge and if they have a market for it. So it would be, think of the merchantman as less of it's going to be a rarer ship because it's going to be hard to track it down. But just like the Prowler, you just need to know the right people, have the right reputation, have the right money at the right time. But that's the thing. It's it's not necessarily the sentimentality of going from generation to generation. It's more about, I don't have to spend the money to buy a new merchantman. I have a merchantman. Fuck you. Yeah. No, Wing Commander's not really in there. The closest thing to Wing Commander would be the wars against the Tavaran. Seems to be slightly modeled after the Wing Commander story. It fell off a space truck, exactly. No problem, dude. Yeah, see, that's the thing, is that Tavaran are known to be, they build a section for Tavaran fans of Sadabal. So you have the home team and the away team, and then they'll build in the center section a place just for Tavaran. Because for Tavaran, the goal is the acquiring and the skill. if you're a good player of a game, you deserve to be cheered for. So they'll cheer for whoever is winning, but then it's not just who's winning, it's whoever's playing well. They enjoy the sport of Sadaball is enjoyable to them because of the skill that it takes to play it. So it kind of goes with like kind of a good kind of microcosm of their culture. Unique, skilled individuals are highly valued in Banu culture because of that. There's a reason why the lore team and like a lot of people at CIG love the Banu, because they're very much I feel like it's very much reflective of a lot of CIG's own ethics, their own kind of work style, which is, if it's cool, let's do it. You know, like let's focus on this because it's fun and it's interesting, and try to get that done, which kind of reflects on the Banu. It's kind of, if it's good, if it's awesome, why not we do it? They cheer for both sides, yeah. Did I say Tavarin? My bad, the Banu. Is there any lore, is there lore on any race? Is there any lore for race on super elite soldiers? Super elite. Define super elite. You're talking about like super soldiers? The humans have the Marines. The Marines are a very highly specialized creme de la creme of the military. Army, Navy, you know, some people are directly chosen for the Marines, and they don't work like the Marines in, like, say, U.S. or British Navy. They're their own branch, and they have their own ships. They have their own like stations and bases that are separate, and it's like the super elite end up going to the Marines. Yeah, advocacy. So it's important. I think one of the things that's a little weird that CIG's tended to blur the lines with is they've add advocacy as kind of very common sites. Advocacy personnel, like advocacy officers, are different from advocacy agents. You can think of like the advocacy that you see between UAE Space, as far as I know, are not agents. What those are kind of like U.S. Marshals. They're federal agents that work for, or federal officers that work for the UAE. Advocacy agents are like FBI agents. They're people who are very highly skilled and specialized in criminal matters, and agents are often the ones who are leading criminal prosecution kind of areas. Like the advocacy agent in charge of the Stanton system, special agent in charge, is the one who's responsible for the current... what am I thinking on it? The Civilian Defense Force activation. So the call to arms missions you guys do. That's because that she activated it in the system when she came in and took over as special agent in charge of the Stanton system. They sent an agent after you. Yeah. And agents are like Rangers in Texas, like, you know, mythology sort of thing, like the Texas Rangers or the FBI agents. They're just super specialized badasses that will hunt you down and will get you. And they're completely authorized, licensed to kill. They're authorized to kill. Have they given a full history of the Mobile Glass yet? Not entirely. We know that Microtech is the one who designed and built them. I don't know if we know exactly when they were first built. They just kind of have been around for a while. Is there any available lore on the Klesher rehabilitation? Not yet. Likely it's been written and it just hasn't been published yet. It'll probably come out right before 3.9 comes out with that stuff. The agents do have some limited capacity in Banu space because they have connections in Banu space. Advocacy agents are the only ones authorized to go across by UEE law. They're not legally allowed to be there often, but they often have enough connections with the local Banu that you switch some things around. Because there are cases in lore, for instance, when the first Vandul attack happened, advocacy agents were sent out to investigate the attack on the Vandul, but they actually sent out messages to their counterparts in the Banu Protectorate to see if they had heard about these similar stuff. So I guess real muddy. Yeah, they're not legally allowed to be there, but because the Banu Protectorate is so different, each planet is its own. There's no centralized government for the Banu. They will enforce it, sort of. But there's always guys, the agents are the guys who have connections with Banu security or police officers in the Banu space. So, is the space whale a joke or a real creature? It's a joke. It's actually a rock. Space whale is an orbiting body. I want to say Nino is where it orbits, but it's an asteroid that they call the space whale. The UEE Militia Initiative, the Militia Mobilization Initiative, it was activated after the attack on Vega, specifically because a lot of UEE Navy personnel had to be pulled out of central systems to the front lines. But because the reality is that the UEE is not always in control of all the systems that it has control over. So there are places that have no representation in the Senate, but have settlements that are effectively the part of the UEE. They're part of the governor's council. They have their own governor's councils. They are protected by the UEE, but they don't have representation. And there are some systems which are kind of in between, where there are people who live there, and there are people in the UEE who are actively work, and like the UEE technically has jurisdiction over. But there's no official recognition as its a UEE system. Things like, for instance, the coil, where Squadron 42 takes place. That system, I'm blanking on it right now, but that system itself isn't fully UEE. It's technically, but and so they activated the Militia Mobilization Initiative is designed to give military grade material to local militias so they can patrol their own systems to lessen the cost of patrolling those systems by the UEE. The Odin system, thank you. The Odin system is technically part of the UEE, but there's no one who lives there. It's really not an inhabited system. There's sparse outposts around the place, but it doesn't have enough people for representation in the Senate. It has no value to be a part of the Senate. The thing that's the most interesting thing about it is the coil. The UEE is the best faction? It depends. Depends on your point of view. I mean, there's a lot of factions. Question, will we see Tavaran flying prowlers and other ships in the PU eventually? Probably. So the Banu is Space Italy. I just about one of my friends laughed at me and think it was useless because I believe in it, though. If you want to use it as a troop transport, yes, it is very much a troop transport. The Prowler is, I would say, it doesn't have any practical use beyond that. And right now, it's hard to get a value for troop transports because outside of some very limited situations, often player controlled, like PvP ideas, it really doesn't have a lot of use, but it probably will in the future, especially for getting a lot of people to a place. Because you can kind of do that with any ship, but the Prowler is specifically designed to do that. So it has a little bit better chances of surviving it. Yeah. The UEE is not as powerful as many people believe it is. You're dealing with a society that the people who have been the planets that have been part of the UEE for a long time have had the most populated ones have been part of the system for a long time. And those that are growing are starting to get part of the system, and those that are the smaller areas, the fringe areas of the UEE, tend to have less loyalty to the UEE because they see them as nothing but cops. Essentially, they're there to keep them in line, but don't actually give a lot of support to them, which is one of the reasons why Terra is very popular as a headquarters or as a future capital for humanity, because Terrans tend to think more about that. Like, Terran politicians tend to play to those people, to the places that don't have as much population, who don't have as much pull in the UEE, and tend to say, hey, you, even though you may be a citizen or a civilian and not a citizen, you still matter. We're going to try to extend rights to you. And that's one of the big kind of political things that's going on with the transitionalists, who are the party that is most popular in Terra, is they're trying to grab more people that way. So it's very give and take, versus places like the Xi'an space, which is very firmly Xi'an, but that's just because of their culture is very much not a monoculture, but it's very much a culture of confirmation, like conforming. And everyone in the Xi'an Empire has to have served in the military. There is no option. You served in the military at some point in your life. So that's the kind of like the differences. Concerning my character, he's the more disenfranchised towards the UEE, very well aware of their history and struggle to move away and gloss over the troubled past, but rather operate in independent life, which is opportunities present. Which is why, in terms of the story, it's very fun, because us as players have a little bit more option. When you're talking about the UEE, and you can be ambivalent. You can be whatever, I just want to make money. You can be a UEE, like, strong believer in the UEE. You could be someone who's like, fuck this place, and somewhere in between, because not all humans have a mono belief in the system. Question, what do we know of the Bearcat? We know that it exists. It was a test vehicle that was going up against the Hawk originally, that became the Hawk. I believe it was also part of the UEE fleet. But that's about it. We don't know anything else beyond that. It was the Aegis entry that was the same entry as the Hawk. It's too cool to be a space smuggler to miss the chance, right? Do you think we'll see a new ship manufacturer come into the game in the future? Maybe. I mean, I think likely you'll see some of the smaller manufacturers get fleshed out a little bit more, like Kruger, and places like Crusaders. Basically, the Crusader treatment, where Crusader was technically a ship manufacturer, but they didn't have any ships they built, so they started making them in game. Making them so they could do it. Consolidated Outland will probably have more, that kind of thing. Well, for those, I'm glad, Craiglin. I do an entire YouTube series just on Star Citizen lore. It's called Galactic Historian. And the purpose of Tuesdays is this Galactic Historian stream is more as this kind of just discussing lore, discussing the game, feeling those kind of things out. Excuse me. Thank you, man. Exmo GH. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Ferric. For those of you guys who don't know, this is just a new format. I know people came in from DJ stream, that kind of stuff. Tuesdays, this is what we do. It's going to be a little shorter than I normally stream, just because after a while it's going to get kind of boring. Hey, why not? Yeah, we'll see. Likely SpaceX. There's a legal issue of putting SpaceX in the game. It's more likely that in lore, SpaceX was acquired, like SpaceX and Blue Origin and those kind of companies were acquired by RSI. Because RSI is like the granddaddy, the grandpappy of all ship manufacturers. And they did exist around the same time as SpaceX and Blue Origin. And it was their discovery of quantum technology, of quantum engine technology, that essentially changed how exploration was done in the solar system, and they cornered the market on it. So, captain's quarters, that would work too. He might, yeah, if it gets some good stuff like that. Do the Banu only have 2 different ships? No, they have lots of different ships. The only 2 ships that we have in game is just because CIG hasn't developed the other ones. And it's also not unlikely that you'd see Banu flying human, Tavaran, Xi'an, or Vanduul ships. I don't give a fuck. They fly what they can. It's just that Banu weren't always exposed to other civilizations, so they still have their own designs. I wouldn't be surprised if we found out that Misk also was being built in Banu space, because we know that Misk ships are being built by the Xi'an. Fun fact: there are hulls, the whole series. There are ships that are built by the Xi'an with Misk's permission that run in Xi'an space, specifically the whole series. Which is why the whole series is the most common ship in the verse. The Driller, which is a destroyer. There's the Cleaver, which is the boarding vessel. You have the Kingship, obviously. And there's at least a cruiser that we know about. There's lots of Vanduul ships out there. They're basically a void species. They're a species that exist entirely in their ships. The Void Bomber. Yeah, I forgot the Void Bomber as well. Any manufacturers that we know of, but there isn't any ships out. Not right now. There's probably some shuttle manufacturers that exist, because those are things that have been brought up before in lore, but we don't have a lot of that yet. Do you think we'd come to fear some of those and have a talk about them? Yeah, I just saw that. We don't have any. Well, the problem is the Vanduul are they're very selective species, so we don't know a lot about Vanduul technology other than what we've captured. We know that it tends to be very utilitarian and Spartan, because that's the way the Vanduul live. Yeah. There's a lot of there's not a lot of specifics. I have to remember what the name of the jellyfish creatures are, but Hurston. We do know about the Ranta. The Ranta is an isopod, basically a giant roly-poly. They live in the caves of the Stanton system. That's the Ranta dung. Don't know how dangerous they are. They're likely scavengers more than anything. Like, tiny isopods have been known to eat the tongues of fishes on Earth, and then literally replace the tongues on fishes. So we know that they tend to do crazy shit like that, and they tend to get pretty big and nasty, and they can go for years without eating. So I wouldn't put it past CIG that Rantas in game are scavengers who live inside dead bodies. Because you go and go find this guy who's dead, fell down a cave. You go look through his body, and then out chest comes a Ranta, like, meh, because it got a fucking lay its eggs in there or some shit like that. Because CIG loves fucking aliens. But there's also the jellyfish species, which is an invasive species that lives all over the UEE that can be kind of aggressive. I'm sure someone has already mentioned it, but I didn't know what it is. Omnicrabs. There we go. The Xiphopod. The Xiphopod is what it is, not the Omnicrabs. Consults lore, yeah. I don't know if we have an exactly idea where the Xiphopods originally were from. Yeah, the Xiphopods. They're called, also known as the blind Oni crabs. They're from Lear 1, apparently. I just looked it up. They're from Lear 1. That's fucking fuck Lear. Fuck Lear to like, no. Fuck you. No. No, I'm done. I'm out. No, not Lear. Nope. Don't go to the Lear system. They're native to hot, warm, gassy. Let me pull up the Star Citizen Tools thing real quick so you guys can see it. So this is the Xiphopod. This is all we know about them. They're an invasive species. Their unattended eggs can hatch in less than 2 weeks, or two to 3 weeks. They're all over Hurston. This is what they look like. Yep. No, like Lear, basically, if you want to go to a place where the humans, the native species, and the planets are trying to kill you, go to Lear. All of the Lear planets want to just murder you. It's a death. It's Space Australia. Lear is Space Australia. Oh, 100%. These things are an invasive species, and they exist all over Hurston. So when this is probably one of the first species that'll make it into the game when it comes to that sort of thing. Also, let me look up an isopod. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about with Rantas. We don't have... All we know is that that Rantas are isopods. Been a good image of them. Give you a reference. What a giant isopod looks like. Oh, here we go. This is a good one. Of course, this is the famous one. The giant isopods and the Doritos. Here are isopods eating an alligator. See if I can find a better one for this. Here's a good one. So that's essentially what a Ranta looks like. Right there. Thank you, Aimless. Yeah, for those of you guys who want to know, sources and tools, like I talk about, like about, you know, one of the things I do is I look through the lore posts, and then I find some interesting ideas, and then I go to sources and tools, try to find a little bit more information about it. It's not always accurate. It's a wiki, so it's not always accurate. But the wiki does have usually link its sources. So if I find something that's interesting in a lore post, I'll go to the tools, look up for that specific thing, and see if they have a post on it, and then look for all of the references to that they link, all their evidence they link to that, and then try to kind of start making connections based off of what I know. That's how I make Galactic Historian. So, for instance, making like the Terra versus Earth episode was a lot about taking what I know about Terra and what I know about Earth and kind of seeing where they crossed and kind of talking about that. The Explorers episode was me looking at each individual. Like, I knew a couple of them, but then I went through some of the other kind of systems, like the systems that were discovered when they were discovered. And then I went through those histories and found, like, oh, this guy here, like, I want to say Butts, but it's not his name. The guy, this like the third or fourth explorer that I talked about, who found the other jump point to the guy who named the Davian system. I'm fucking terrible at names. I swear to God. That chat is bugged. Yeah. How do they float? Hydrogen. Their bodies are filled with hydrogen gas, I believe, is what they do, because they feed on xiphopods via biological process. The xiphophod converts surrounding air into hydrogen-helium mix and circulates it within the large hollow cavity. This allows it to float, and then it propels itself through the air by expelling gas from its body. It literally farts itself around. Which is incredibly light compared to its size. The most lightweight adult xiphophod ever found was weighed only about 300 grams, about 10 ounces. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in lore which is interesting. So flamethrowers win, yeah. Blimps with teeth, yeah. Shoot them with tracers? Incendiaries is what you want to use. God, I could see that as a pastime, sitting outside of the Hurston's gates with like a rifle, and just being like, "All right, I'm gonna hit him with an incendiary and watch it pop." So they find dead ones essentially. They take dead ones that have already been the gas have been expelled and then weigh them. Remember, they're an invasive species. Lear 1 is not really a UEE territory. Lear is not a UEE territory. It sort of was, but then got taken over by a cult. And as a result, it's very hard to regulate it. So it kind of hits right on freighters all over the place. Yeah. Or those things that you see in Fifth Element that are like kind of like they cling onto the the landing gear. They go around with like flamethrowers. That's what I imagine xiphopods being like. The Oni crabs. Make sure that music is still going. Yes, I'm still watching. The plasma rifle? Yes. Later, Hormones. Thanks for hanging out, man. How the fuck did they get to Hurston in the first place? Because they're so light, they likely stowed away on things like Hull series. Remember, Hurston gives zero fucks about environmental damage because they use the whole ground as either a strip mine or target practice. The planet is basically an afterthought. It's just a place where they can build shit. Not yet. There's no information about what brought the Javelin down, unless at least hasn't been talked about yet. It also looks like it's an older Javelin, so it could be a remnant of the UEE's. So, little thing about Stanton. Stanton was discovered by the UEE after it had already been discovered by other people. When they discovered the Stanton system had been inhabited by smugglers and miners and homesteaders for a long time, at least for a not insignificant amount of time. But no one had claimed the system yet, like officially. So the UEE, because Stanton is literally a halfway point between Terra and Sol in terms of its jump points for large jump points. It became too valuable of a system for them to give up. So they went through and just systematically removed every single of these early settlers. So likely that Javelin is either an accident or a successful attack by the locals against the UEE. Because the Stanton is one of the rare occasions where they brought in a Bengal fucking carrier to deal with the problems of the Stanton system. Like, they brought in a Bengal carrier group to conquer the Stanton system. And ain't nobody gonna fuck with that. Oh, I thought he was talking about Daymar. There's a Javelin on Lear? Oh, from the CitizenCon demo, set 2016. No, I don't think we really do. Though I wouldn't be surprised if it had to do with the takeover. There was an attempt. So, good Doctor storyline. if you know about there was a company allowed for this guy to build a settlement on Lear and using his own kind of new age practices, that kind of stuff. But when they came to kind of check up on him to take control of the planet, he essentially he basically converted everyone to become his like a cult, and they kicked out all of the overseers, but then they returned with an army, and then that army got killed. So they took they like stopped them and then took over their because they surrendered, I think is what it was, and they took over all their stuff. So that Javelin may have been part of that military force and may have crashed on Lear during the fight. What is the Polaris used for in lore? It is a patrol vessel, an attack patrol vessel. Think of it kind of like a destroyer escort. Same class as it's like a lighter class than a frigate. It's countered, like you'd see a Polaris with a hammerhead, or a Polaris, a hammerhead, and a Nautilus together. It's a heavy offensive ship designed to take on larger capital class ships, but it doesn't do so well against fighters and smaller ships, whereas the hammerhead is designed to take on smaller ships. They're designed as a 1-2 punch. But because the Polaris is smaller, it can also go through smaller jump points, which makes it more versatile to patrol. That's the thing that's important to remember as well. People go, why don't you just build huge ships that can patrol everything? It's like, because it's hard to get them from place to place, or because you may have to go through larger jump points in order to accommodate them. So, and some places do not have large jump points. You have to go through smaller jump points. So, I believe so. Yeah, battle technology in the 30th century is insane, yo. Are larger stellar nations still heavily expanding as people deciding to simply discover new systems and settle there? C-Max, are you talking about others other than the UEE, the main human government? We don't know. The Banu aren't actively involved in expanding their empire or expanding their colonization efforts, it seems. And the Xi'an, if they are, they ain't telling shit. The Xi'an are super secret about that. The Devarin are too weak to expand, and the Vanduul are actively invading human space, but they don't have a colonization effort as much as like humans. They don't treat life the same way that humans do. The Vanduul conquer and move on. So humans are the only species that seems to be actively trying to expand that we know of. The Xi'an may be doing that as well, but they're very quiet about it. Unfortunately, no. There's no Reclaimer lore. As far as I know, the Reclaimer is just built by Aegis. It's the only thing we know. But C-Max, the main reason for something like Project Archangel, which exists in lore, it's the synth world, is to try and reduce the need to find new planets. If you can just build planets out of what you can find, then you don't need to find new worlds. And humans are very concerned about, by expanding the worlds, like the locations, you're dealing with like trying to expand and conquer, find new worlds and settle them. It's gonna inevitably cause conflict within humanity, if not bumping up against other species. It's essentially what happened between the humans and the Xi'an. Was first contact was because a freaking terraforming crew showed up to a place. It's like, hey, this is ours, and started terraforming the planet. And the Xi'an is like, yo, why you terraforming our planet? And it caused they literally captured and held hostage the terraforming crews, and the UEE Navy showed up, and both of these navies, the Xi'an and the human navies, were just about to go to war with one another over this until they kind of calmed down and figured it out. So, yeah, expansion's a little complicated there. Yes, people are 100% allowed to go out of human space and claim and take things, as long as it's not already been claimed by the Xi'an or the Banu. So if you find a new system and nobody's around, it's yours. In fact, if you register the jump point to register the discovery, you get a lot of leeway in terms of what you can do to that system. You can name the jump point, you can name the system. In many cases, you can claim mineral or other rights to that system. It has been done before by companies. So you can like choose to sell rights to other companies. And in cases like the Consolidated Outland Corporation, there are people who are actively pushing for the expansion of humanity, that you need more places for humans to go. Yes, and that's what happened with the Stanton system. The UE wanted it, and you're fucked. Luckily, the UE had found it. They weren't the first to find it, but they were the first to, like, the military was the first to register it. So. Any lore about heists? Yes, there's the Caterpillar heist, where they use that Caterpillar to steal a bunch of shit and then use the command module to get away. There's the heist that took place for the Star Runner heist, where they raided the labs on Terra, the Bearing labs. The Bearing laser lab on Terra was raided. I believe Lost Generation talks about a heist. It's an entire storyline that talks about heists. Lots of cool heists in lore. There's the Keller's Run, which is pretty cool. Not a heist, but a high-speed chase. Oh, there were people in Stanton, but Stanton was not registered as a discovery with the UEE. And because it wasn't registered as a discovery with the UEE, and the UEE, it essentially was... It allowed for a shortcut between Sol and Terra, and that's a major shipping route and also a major military route. The UEE said, cool, this is ours now. And instead of like just... I'm sure they told everyone to get out, but they didn't just say get out. They said, get out, here's my fucking carrier fleet. Fight me. They whipped out the big dick and slapped him in the face with it. That's essentially what happened. It was just like, no. So if the Prowler is scheduled to fly soon, does that mean it was a priority for Squadron 42? If so, how do you think it may be involved? Spec Ops? No, CS Digital Design. This was like 100 years ago, maybe 150, early 29th century, after the Mezzer regime. It was deemed as a necessity for them to take it because it was a major military and commercial route, and the people who were there did not register the find with the UEE. So think of it as eminent domain. They essentially claimed an eminent domain on the system. Oh, yeah. So I have an entire series talking about Jumptown and how it's actually in lore and how the shit that we did a couple years ago was 100% in lore now. So, I mean, they did the same thing to the Nexus system after Keller's Run. The UEE is very anxious about certain things, especially if it threatens or challenges the current status quo of companies or the government. And the government is they will throw their weight around if they have to. Yes, CS Digital Design, it is in lore. There's an entire Senate hearing because crime's on the rise all over the UEE, but specifically in Stanton, it's on the rise. And because Stanton is technically owned by the companies that own the planets, they're the ones who are in charge of policing it. And so the UEE is like, why did we gave you all these leeways and you're not doing your job? You're not doing what we told you to do. So to deal with the rising crime, they called in Crusader Industries to talk about it at the Senate. The CEO showed up and tried to give out the new stats and say, hey, we're getting a handle on it. And in the middle of this discussion about what's going on, what the senator from Terra was like, what's Jumptown? And the CEO's like, what? She's like, what's Jumptown? Very simple question. Because if you're getting a handle on all of this conflict, why do I know about Jumptown from Sol? My office has been hearing rumors about Jumptown from Sol, this drug lab in the middle of, and the CEO's just like, oh, can we get a break? Can we get I'm out of water. I need to use the bathroom. Can we get a 5-minute recess? So we can figure out what the fuck I just walked myself into. So, and that happened right at the end of the Jumptown Wars. So. No, they probably would have still taken it over C-Max, but they likely would have done it in a more legal capacity rather than throw the fucking the Navy at them. They still would have claimed them in a domain, but exactly. You were referenced in lore. All of us were referenced in lore. Hey, coffee. on the lawful side. Thanks for that. Points, gift, and active. Everybody gets stuff, and I forgot to do this earlier with UK Dude. Thank you so much for that. Is there any Redeemer lore as well? I thought that it was Reclaimer lore. There is no Redeemer lore yet. Exactly, yeah. Usually the UEE, if they find it, if they find a system, the UEE will pay them for it. But in case of, like, if it was eminent domain, if they're going to take it, they're like, hey, this is the minimum we're going to give you. Take it and leave it. Hey, thank you so much for gifting that sub to Kraken. Wait for the new prison to come out and the wars will be happening all over again. To break prisoners out. I don't really know if there'll be like a lot of wars to break prisoners out, but I definitely think there will be people who try to get out. What about the elections of the new Imperator, a game event of this year? I don't know if it'll be a game event for Imperator. It might be. I'm doing an entire Galactic Historian report on that, which will come out hopefully next week. As you can tell, my audio messed up, so I'm doing my best to... I was going to record it today, but then my audio messed up, so... Do you think the Redeemer's thrusters will act differently from typical thrusters of the ship? I'm going to be honest, I think the Redeemer is going to get completely reworked. I think the style of the Redeemer may have to go into the trash bin because it doesn't fit with the flight model. But we'll see. Exactly. Easy payday. So Redeemer lore. Yes, Crichton. Tell me more. I think the Redeemer is only known right now. The lore that's a part of is that it was built 2945. Like that's the best. It's part of the UEE call to for a new gunship. Or experimental, yeah. 3050. I wouldn't be 100 years. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they had to redo that, just because there's a lot of scale problems with the Redeemer. The Redeemer was not scaled properly. There was a lot of placements for maneuvering, which they'd have to kind of change that around. I think the engine style could be saved, but it'll depend on, like, it'll probably end up being like a vectored thrust engine as well. The Redeemer was a class project for that team. They heard about the contest and entered it, the ship, which is fair, which is why it doesn't fit Star Citizen at all. Yeah. We'll see. This is a nemesis, yeah. Honestly, CS, the engine is the I hate that engine. Fucking hate it. The hair curlers, the stapler engines, I fucking hate them. Like, I am not passionate. I do not have any passionate hate for any ship other than that goddamn abomination. I know other people do. People love that ship. I want to burn it in a fire. Now, as for its roll, I'm very interested to see how its roll works, though. I think you could save the engines in a way. I think you could use them as folded for flight, and then when they go into hover mode, they expand. So instead of like Like, so when you're flying, the engines are going straight backwards. But when you go into hover mode, like part of it retracts and kind of goes down. So you kind of have like a vector on it, kind of the way that the vectored engines on the Raptor, I think, work. So like part of it will vector down and then vector so you can keep some thrust. But you still have the thrust in the back, so it kind of splits the thrust, so you have a weaker thrust when you're in an atmosphere. It still came the same design language. Well, it's not just that the design is wrong. It doesn't fit with the design language of a purebred gunship. Yeah, it needs to look like an Aegis ship, but it also, I think, eventually will end up being a wombo combo with the Valkyrie. From what I understand about the ship team, they want to turn it into the Valkyrie and the Redeemer would fly together, so you'd have flights of Valkyries and flights of Redeemers. So the Valkyries would drop off the troops, and then the Redeemers would stay up on station and then hit targets for the ground forces. The Redeemer, the Aegis Redeemer, it's the ship that was made by the next great starship contest. It's actually the only ship in Star Citizen that was designed by fans. Well, not working for CIG, at least. For CIG, it was essentially just a giant, let's find people who can make ships. I think half of the teams that were there ended up working for CIG. Will CIG completely remove the troop room and Redeemer during the rework? Probably. It's likely going to end up being something like that. No, I think he did the Silverback. That was the guy who did the Silverback. That was the one-man show. He had some crazy animations. Oh, does Port Olisar be destroyed or simply removed? So here's the thing about that. Sorry I didn't see that earlier. Port Olisar, we talked about this earlier. In order for it to be destroyed, it would probably require CIG to do some sort of modeling for the destruction, which would be counterintuitive for what they wanted to do anyways. If they're going to remove Port Olisar or remodel Port Olisar, they would do it with the current technology that they already have. Going back and taking old assets and modeling damage states for them so that people could blow it up would be prohibitively expensive for just a set piece. So I think that if they do destroy it, it'll likely be over the course of a patch. So a story where the station's being attacked. You can go participate in it. You can't spawn there anymore, but you can go participate it back and forth in the battle back and forth. And then in the next patch, it's gone. And you just have a news report saying that it was destroyed. Maybe a cinematic that CIG mocks up to kind of show it being destroyed. And then that kind of thing. I think that's the best case scenario you're dealing with there. But likely, because of how hard it would be for them to have a damage state added to it, and it's just expensive, probably not. Fears Within. Okay, yeah. Big ass science ship in the intro. Yeah, I get that. Engines on it. Yeah, it's supposed to be there. It's just an older asset. So they'll replace it with a newer asset. Yeah, I think, Diablos is right. That was the Prowler. Oh, that's the Copperhead? Oh. They should do another. Well, they talked about the next great Star Marine to design the Titan suits, and that stopped pretty quick. Did I do the retweet properly? No, I didn't do the retweet properly. Hold on. Just copy this and fix it real quick. This has been awesome, though. Thank you guys for the raids and everything like that. I'm going to call it a night here. But thank you guys for coming in and hanging out with us. We do this. This is the first time we've done this, but we're going to be doing it on Tuesdays, these office hours. Just kind of hanging out, talking about lore, talking about the game for a couple hours. And then, but we'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow we've got a new segment that we're going to be doing. We're going to be playing Pulsar, the Lost... CMAX listeners that follow. We'll be playing Pulsar, the Lost Colony. Kind of a role-play stream. We'll be playing with other streamers. Buster the Destroyer, Spazzy McGee, Loken Plays, and Moonbase Kappa, and myself. We'll be playing that for a couple hours, then I'll play some Star Citizen. So come in and hang out. 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, like 2 a.m. GMT. Do you think it'll have a first look at the Crucible soon? No, I think the Crucible is going to be one of those things that's done way down the line. Thank you guys for coming on. All right, let's find someone to raid real quick. Send the love on to somebody else. Who is streaming? You know, Hazard streaming. He's another roleplay guy. He loves the fucking lore. He loves a fucking lore.
Yeah, A-Firm. I jumped to your quantum and I think I went through part of the planet.
Without risk is a triumph without glory.
Okay, that's him. He's very loud. Thank you guys for coming on. Yeah, we'll be back next Tuesday for this one. Love you guys' faces. Go hang out with Hazard, having a good time. Later, guys.